Tonight on Let It Rip.
So how many informants do you need until it's actually your plot?
The case against the men accused of plotting to kidnap Governor Whitmer thrown into chaos this week after it was revealed a dozen informants planned much of it. And a lead FBI agent is arrested for allegedly beating his wife after a swingers party. But first,
last year we were your heroes and now we're your villains!
vaccine rates have stalled as the Delta variant rises and more hospitals, businesses, and even the NFL impose mandates to fight the virus. Time to let it rip. On the panel tonight, Dr. Farhan Badi, professor and CEO of Carefree Medical in Lansing. Dr. Michael Bisuito, surgeon and member of the Wayne State Board of Governors. Dr. Abdul El Said, public health expert and author of the book Healing Politics. And as always, anchor attorney Charlie Langton. But we begin tonight with one of the greatest wide receivers in NFL history, former Detroit Lion player, now businessman Herman Moore. Herman, thanks for being here. We thank you all for being here. But Herman, I want to start with this because the NFL tonight has adopted a new policy. The league won't force players to get a shot, but if there's an outbreak, that forces the cancellation of the game that can't be rescheduled. The team with the outbreak will not only forfeit the game, they also have to cover the financial losses of the other team and possibly face more discipline. What do you think about that policy?
Well, I think it's going to be a policy that's going to be met with a lot of conflict. It's going to be one in which I think there's going to be litigation. You're going to see this go up to the Players Association. And there's going to be, anytime that you look at a policy change like this, that where you're mandating or you're imposing a certain kind of punishment on a team, regardless of how it originates. But you're on the other side, you're giving players the option of getting vaccinated. It's going to lead to where do you lie? Where does the responsibility and the liability lie, especially when you start talking about monetary consequences. So this is going to be one that I don't think is going to play out as easily as the NFL has looked at, but I think they're doing it because there's something that needs to be in place. There's policies that change all the time. The players sign contracts. The teams are part of an association. That means that they're mandated by certain rules and votes and all these things. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
Well, the good news is that we do have weapons now in the fight against the virus. We have vaccines that work. And Dr. Bisuito, VanBuren Township is mandating right now that all of its public employees get the shot. You're a doctor. I assume you're vaccinated. Should they be as well, those workers?
I think it's nonsense. I think, once again, we're seeing political science taking over, and it's pushing aside medical science. First of all, as a disclosure, I'm vaccinated. All 6 of my children are vaccinated. But I was at a chief's meeting at St. John Ascension this week where I'm chief of plastic surgery. We have one case in the hospital. I called an intensivist at one of the major Lansing hospitals today, and she told me that they have one case in the hospital right now. I think we have a situation here where we got an administration where they have no notches in the win column and they need a crisis. And every time they try to deflect with these crises, they impose political science over medical science. And it's just bad medicine, in my opinion. I remember Vice President Kamala Harris saying when she was running, as long as Trump was promoting these vaccines, she would not have it. Now they're out there telling everyone to get the vaccine. Over 25, I think the African-American vaccination rate is still under 25%. It's no wonder they're all confused. It's no wonder the whole public is confused because of all this political science. Let the science take over, biological and medical science.
Well, meanwhile, Dr. Badi, we have two major health systems, Trinity and Henry Ford, not only mandating that its thousands of workers get the vaccine, but also threatening to fire them if they don't. But if you fire 30% of the nurses or doctors, what would that do to the quality of health care?
Well, of course, you're going to have an immediate crisis with the quality of healthcare. But look, private hospitals, private employers should be able to do what's best, what they think is best for the safety of their communities. Listen, there's a precedent for this. We already require school children to be vaccinated before they go to school in kindergarten. Most hospitals across America, or at least many hospitals across America, require their employees to get a flu shot every year as a condition of employment. And so this is not something that's brand new. And I think that if Henry Ford and other hospitals across America believe that, they need to do this to keep their employees safe, then that's well within their legal right. And although it's true that right now we don't have too many cases in the hospital, just wait 2 weeks, because 83% of the cases across America are the Delta variant. Right now, only 2% are of the cases in Michigan are the Delta variant. But just wait a couple of weeks and those numbers are going to increase drastically. And it's just a matter of time. We're staring at a crisis in the face, and now is the appropriate time to act before it gets out of hand.
And yet, Dr. Syed, so many people refuse the vaccine, including 60% of the people in Detroit. A new study says that Detroiters don't think the vaccine is safe, don't trust the science. Is it even possible to change their minds?
You know, it's sad to see my previous colleague, I agree with Dr. Body, by the way, but the previous colleague who is a physician should know better, arguing that because cases are low, people shouldn't get vaccinated is like saying, you know, I'm not going to wear my seatbelt because I haven't gotten in an accident yet. The reason you do it is so that you don't get sick. It's about prevention. And the fact is that science has shown us that 97% of people who are being hospitalized or dying of COVID-19 right now are the unvaccinated. This vaccine is safe. This vaccine is effective. And we have to stop pretending like this is not something that people should do. I remember reading in my books to a time when people would line up to get access to vaccines for things like polio and smallpox. Today, vaccines have been a victim of their own success. What we need to be able to do is to deliver the science honestly. I agree, we have to get the politicization out of the way, but we need to deliver the science, and we need to be encouraging people to do the thing that they need to do. How many stories have we heard of people on their deathbed saying, I really wish I would have gotten that vaccine. I really wish I wouldn't have listened to the politicians who are telling me that somehow I've got nothing to trust. I really wish I wouldn't have forwarded that chain post on Facebook. We can do better. We must do better. But it means leading with empathy, understanding that people are afraid, but also coming with the science. And those two things have to go hand in hand.
But Charlie, you heard Herman say there will likely be a lot of lawsuits, certainly in the NFL, but certainly too, I think, from employees as well, because you have some workers saying, look, I'm going to sue the company because I don't want to be forced to take this vaccine. But you have other workers who may sue the company for putting people who are infected next to people who are not.
I tell you, this whole discussion is weird for me. If the vaccine is safe, if it is effective, I am vaccinated, why doesn't the FDA get out and approve the vaccine? That takes away a major argument for a lot of people that don't want the vaccine because it's not approved. Oh, there's some conditional improvements. Get out there, and I don't want to bring politics into this, but if there's an issue as to whether or not, what are they waiting for? What are they waiting for? And who heads the FDA? Who can put some power on the FDA or pressure on the FDA to approve this vaccine? I'll tell you, that would do a lot to take away the argument that the vaccine is not safe or scary or whatever. If the government comes out and says it is approved, and I'll tell you what, union people right now, the NFL, there's a union. If the league wants to make new rules, I tell you, the union is going to have a lot of say. And I don't think you can fine them or discipline them if they choose not to get the vaccine. Why? Because they have an argument. The government hasn't even approved this. Get rid of that argument if this vaccine is truly safe and effective, which I believe it is, based on what with 3 doctors on the panel today. Why is it approved by the government?
Herman, let me bring you back in because, look, I have known a lot of athletes who refuse to get the vaccine because they think it will impede their performance on the field. And in fact, there are 90 plus cases of COVID now in the Olympic Village as we speak. And many of those never got the vaccine. I don't know what the answer is in terms of athletic performance versus protecting yourself against COVID.
Well, I have a couple points here. One is, most of us, you're beyond the stage of, am I vaccinated or not? Hey, I got vaccinated. My family's vaccinated. And I go 4 times if I had to, because that's what it means to me. Everyone has a decision to make. When we start to politicize this and we start to, there's a consequence to everything. I think the laws, the policies, any of the mandates, that'll handle itself. When you go and you sign up for your phone, all of us have cell phones. Before you can even use that phone, it says you must accept all these things. And I know everyone's not understanding or reading everything that's there, but we find value in saying, you know what, I'm willing to do that because that's what it means to me. You mean to tell me if you think that it's important enough for you to get vaccinated, you will get vaccinated and you'll go and do what you feel is necessary to have that happen. It's not about infringing on your rights. You have the right not to do it. But if a policy gets put in place, I'm a business owner. I have a staffing firm. And what we do here in my corporate headquarters, I have people who are Republican, they're Democrats, they're independents. And I don't make it mandatory that you get vaccinated, but there's a policy in place that says if you are not, and you choose not to, which is your right, then here's what you have to abide by here for the safety and the protocol of all the people in the company and our other teammates that we have talked about. And you agree to that. And I haven't removed their rights. If they choose not to work here, I don't hold them hostage. I don't make them stay here. I mean, they can say, you know what, I don't agree with your policy. I no longer am going to stay with your company and I'm going to leave. But that's what we have to look at, even with the NFL. There are some things in place. The player signed contracts, says, you know what, the league can change this policy. They can make these rules. You have to abide by it. If not, there are legal repercussions. There's legal action that you can take if you feel that, your rights are being taken. And I think we need to take the emotional side of it out of it, where it's a right and a wrong, as much as it is, are we willing to abide by what is in front of us? Are we willing to accept the consequences or not? And if you are, I mean, that's your right, but I don't agree with what everyone's doing. I don't agree with those that necessarily say that they want to be on one side or the other, as much as I go, listen, we've learned what we've learned. And if you're making that decision, be willing to take the consequences that come with that, whether it's at the workplace, whether it's at the place of business, whether it's wherever it may be.
Well, touchdown Herman Moore. I agree entirely, and I just want to pull out a point that I think Herman made, which is to say we understand the risks that people are taking if they choose not to be vaccinated, and in order to protect society, because yes, we live together in this community, we work in shared workplaces, and we have to be thinking about what our actions mean for other people. If you are choosing not to be vaccinated and could potentially be carrying this disease and could hand it off to someone else, there ought to be a way you protect yourself, which is a mask. And so I think what we need to be thinking about here is not blanket mandates in any given way, but it's, as Herman said, there have to be verification processes. If you are vaccinated, that means a certain thing. If you're not vaccinated, that means a certain other thing, because we have to protect ourselves. No longer can we continue to allow this virus to continue to disable our society and keep us from going about and doing our things. And so that means either get a vaccine or choose to protect yourself in another way. But right now we have to be dealing with the misinformation that exists right now that is scaring people off of this. Because let's remember, people are making this decision in the context of a pandemic that killed 600,000 people. It's not like, do you vaccinate, do you not vaccinate? I don't know. It's, do you vaccinate and protect yourself from this pandemic, or do you choose not to vaccinate and not protect yourself and not protect your family and not protect the rest of society? And we have to be recognizing that there's a cost to this, not just for oneself, but for the rest of society as well.
And panel, I think it's also important too that we not vilify either side. If there's someone with whom we work in our family who doesn't want to get the vaccine, we shouldn't label them as stupid or defiant or recalcitrant. We shouldn't put them in a position that makes them feel less than, but in a position that makes them feel that their emotions, although we may not agree with them, are fine to feel, to express, but that we want to persuade them and not force them. I don't know if we're there yet.
Well, Hugh, I deal with this every day in my clinic, where I have patients come in and they're reluctant. They live in an echo chamber, in their little silos. They've heard misinformation, and I don't put them down. I don't belittle them, but I explain to them how the vaccines work, what the data shows, what the effectiveness is, what the safety is, and we have a conversation. And oftentimes I can win them over. And to Dr. El-Sayed's point, I mean, listen. It would be great if we could identify who is vaccinated and who isn't. But the bottom line is the people that are the least likely to agree to wear a mask are the same ones who are the most likely to refuse the vaccine. So unless there's a way to identify who actually has gotten the vaccine and who hasn't, we are in a bind.
And that's where we are now as a society, unfortunately. That is it. But look, panel, we thank you for your comments and your insights. An important discussion that I know we will likely continue as the months and weeks progress. All right, coming up, an FBI agent is arrested for beating his wife. It's the same agent that testified against the men charged in the alleged plot to kidnap the governor. So what happens next if the agent assigned to enforce the law himself winds up in jail? That and more still to come on Let It Rip. Welcome back to RIP. With us right now, former judge and U.S. attorney, now the head of his own law firm, Jeffrey College is back. Also with us, the defense attorney who has handled some of the most high-profile cases in the state, Lillian Diallo. You've already met Charlie, but we begin with defense attorney Nicholas Somberg, whose client is Joseph Morrison, one of the 14 men accused in the alleged plot to kidnap the governor. Now look, Nicholas, with the lead FBI agent arrested for domestic violence against his wife, what does that mean for the case against your client?
Well, I think it means that there's a bit of a credibility issue with these FBI agents, or at least this FBI agent in particular. He's engaging in violence. They're having sex parties. I mean, what type of person is this to be allegedly setting up other people? I think maybe we should be taking a closer look at his life, maybe.
Well, Jeffrey, you've handled high-profile cases yourself. When you have members of law enforcement who themselves are accused of crimes, does that invalidate what they may or might not say on the witness stand?
Well, Hugh, I think it depends upon what the crime is. In this instance, you have a crime of violence, an assault with to commit great bodily harm. It's not a crime of honesty. If it was an offense of fabricating or falsifying evidence, or perjury, I think it would have more relevancy. But even if he was convicted of that offense, I find it unlikely that a judge would allow that conviction to come up at trial because it doesn't relate to honesty, it relates to violence.
Now, Lillian, as a defense attorney, though, I assume that you would certainly want to bring that up, that if some FBI agent is testifying against your client, that would be one of the first things you would bring up to question his credibility.
Absolutely. But I have to agree with Brother Jeff on this one, right? It has to do with theft, dishonesty. So I don't know how I could get it in, but I'm sure I could find other instances. If you are out there with whatever this is going on, right? Beating the wife, sex parties, none of my business. I'm sure it may be something involving dishonesty that I may be able to pick and pull a thread, because ultimately you are law enforcement officials. You are supposed to be the ones upholding the law of the land, not down in the debauchery and creating more problems.
But Charlie, too, we also have what some say is another problem with the prosecution of this case, and that is the number of so-called informants versus the number of actual suspects.
There's two issues here. One of them is your star witness for the government, like sex parties and beating his wife. I'm not so sure the jury is going to hear that. That is going to bring a motion by the government to exclude the testimony, and Nicholas is going to say, no, it's relevant. That's one issue. The other issue is going to be this entrapment kind of thing. And that's for the jury to create some reasonable doubt. If the government witness is the one that instigated this crime, then that's really bad. And that makes the jury think maybe these defendants here didn't do what the government says they did. I think that's far worse than some sex parties. That's interesting. The only other thing about the sex parties, remember Mark Furman, when OJ case, when there was the N-word issue? Mark Furman's credibility was shot. But in this case, I think it's a little bit different. You can attack the credibility of the star witness. That's interesting. But in this case, there may be some differences. But the problem here is that if the star witness instigated the crime, I think that is a problem for the government. And Nicholas ought to be all over that.
Well, Nicholas, go ahead.
I think violence and sex parties are really just par for the course for the FBI. But what the real problem is that the FBI had their hands in every part of this investigation and in every part of this idea plan. They were giving money, and I can only talk about things that are only already in the public record. But their agent became the #2 in command. And then when my client, who is the #1, left the group months before this raid, guess what? Now your agent is number one in command, and he's calling the shots, running trainings, bringing people together, giving people, envelopes of cash. And this is all on the record. They weren't just passively listening and seeing these guys make a plan. The FBI, we have 12 informants. I mean, that's more people than are even charged at the state level. So I think we filed a motion for entrapment. I think it's very strong. And I could see this case getting completely dismissed like the Hatari case.
Well, Jeffrey, how do you see it?
In terms of the entrapment, I don't know the record of this case like the attorney who's actually on the case, but I know in general, the law of entrapment requires two key requirements. And you're just talking about one of them so far, inducing someone or instigating a crime. The other side of the coin, which may be more of a challenge for the defense, is to show that they were not predisposed to commit the crime already. I'm sure the government will argue that they were ready and willing to commit this offense. So you cannot be predisposed already to commit the offense and then claim entrapment. That's going to be their challenge.
But if all this stuff goes to the jury, though, that the informants said, hey, whatever you guys need, we'll get you. Here's how to shoot. Here's how to plan this. I think that's going to be an issue that may not, the judge may not throw the case out. The judge may let this go to the jury, but the jury's going to have some reasonable doubt. Perhaps, again, we don't know all the facts and how these people are going to testify. But I would say if I'm a U.S. attorney, if I'm the government, I'm a little worried right now. My witnesses are not that good at this point.
And Lee, if I say I want to do something that I know is illegal, and I maybe plan a few things, but I never get to the point where I actually carry it out, am I still guilty of conspiracy, still guilty of a crime?
Well, I'm gonna tell you, like they've told us from time immemorial, charge them all and let the jury figure it out, okay? So what they're going to have to show is you were not predisposed to do that kind of behavior. I hate informers. I don't like the use of informers because they always skew against Black people. Always, right? It's always worse for us. But we'll see, you have these people, they were upset, right? You have police officers, FBI agents. Let's talk about January the 6th. So it's going to be a lot to, pull out and see, but maybe a jury will not like it. Maybe they will. But I say charge them all and let that jury figure it out.
And we've already seen some of these defendants turn and point to other defendants. So who knows what might happen when this case goes to trial. But the question is there enough evidence to convict?
But the U.S. attorney, though, seriously, when your star witness, though, does have these problems of sex parties and stuff, and the fact that there's now stuff out there that they may have instigated a crime, taking theoretically innocent people and convincing them to commit some kind of a crime. And again, let's see the evidence. But they've got to be a little bit worried here. This is a high-profile case, and if the government can't get a conviction on a case where the allegation is kidnapping the governor of the state of Michigan, I'd say there's a lot of head-butting going on right now, and there's a lot of people in the U.S. Attorney's Office that are worried at this point.
Well, I don't think
they're worried. I don't think they're worried. I think a lot of this is going to come down to jury selection. And how that process is carried out through the voir dire process in terms of how jurors will be informed of different inflammatory issues and whether or not they can set that aside and still be fair.
All right,
and you can't run from it. You can't run from it in jury selection, right? You need to go head on, put it on the floor, right? It should not be a surprise. So that when you have that jury and you're putting that evidence in front of them, you'll probably know a little bit better how your jury is if you put it in front of them. They'll go, oh, okay. Okay, how do you separate them? There will be things that are bad. There will be things that are good. Mm-hmm. You make a deal with the devil, but to get what you need, the devil is still the devil. But that doesn't mean what the devil is testifying about didn't happen.
And that goes for both the prosecution and the defense. Look, yes. We got to leave it right there. Much more to come as we follow this trial. Stay with us. Final thoughts ahead. Charlie, final thoughts.
I tell you what, in any case, there's good and bad. That's why we have juries. Let the juries sort this out. On the other issue, on the vaccine, let the FDA say that the vaccines are safe. I think that's important. They've had plenty of time. What are they waiting for?
Charlie, thank you. And thank you for watching this edition of Let It Rip.